Welcome to another CRaFTi video. So today's one is kind of an introduction video, kind of an experiments kind of video, or just showing you some experiments that I have done. But I was very kindly sent the LOKLiK ImPress Auto 2 Smart Automatic Heat Press from LOKLiK and HTVRONT to be able to share with you, to kind of show you how it sort of works and what you can do with it. And this machine is actually designed for hobbyists and maybe small business owners to make like customized apparel or things that they can sell, like cushion covers, tote bags, aprons, hoodies, t-shirts, all those kind of things. But as well as trying some of those things, because I definitely wanted to give those bits and pieces a try, I also wanted to experiment with it and see if there was ways of using it in our card making or our paper crafting. I have been successful in a couple of the things that I wanted to try, but another couple of the things that I was really hoping it would work for, I haven't quite managed to get it to work. I've managed to improve the results that I've been getting, but I've not managed to, you know, successfully get a result that I'm happy with. So I'm going to say it doesn't really work for those things, but it's not the machine's fault at all, because the machine is not supposed to do any of the paper crafting things that I have been trying with it. It is supposed to be more for adding things to apparel and home decor, sort of maybe like a stretched canvas, that kind of thing, a wooden panel, coasters, mouse mats, all sorts of things like that. That's what it's supposed to be for. It's not actually anywhere in the instructions, anywhere in any of it does it say that you should be using it to press onto cardstock or try hot foiling in it. This was just me wanting to experiment. So even though a couple of the experiments weren't successful, I still wanted to include them in the video, just so that I could show you that I've had this machine maybe like 6 weeks by the time I'm filming this video, and that's why you know, I've taken quite a while before I've actually got the video done and dusted to be able to share with you, because I just really wanted to try and get these other two things to work and they just wouldn't work. So the things that I've got to be successful are using your puff heat transfer vinyl onto cardstock. So you can definitely use that onto your garments and things as well, and it works brilliantly because I have done that, and I'll be showing images of those kind of things on the screen as I'm talking. But it does work on your cardstock without singeing the card. It doesn't quite give the same puffed effect that you would get onto fabric, because you're working onto a less malleable surface of a piece of cardstock, whereas fabric would sort of mould with it to give a smoother puff. You get a much wrinklier puff, but I think it's a really cool effect nonetheless. And I've also managed to get it to work for one kind of foiling. So I'll go into more detail in it a little bit later and show you some of the samples as well, but the type of foiling I've managed to get it to work with is when you use a kind of adhesive embossing powder. It works really nicely for that kind of technique. I haven't been successful using toner printed sheets with it. It tends to just wrinkle the foil up. It gives a cool effect though, so it could be something that you might want to play around with, but you can get that effect just by using an iron as well. So it's not really something that only this machine could do with hot foiling. And I have also been trying out trying to use hot plates or hot foil plates, and I really thought that this would work, and I have tried so many different variations of changing the pressure, changing the temperature, changing the time, putting in a rubber mat, changing the sandwich, putting them in different orientations, moving it into a different place in the machine, all sorts of different things I have tried. Believe me, I've tried like everything. I cannot get it to work where I'm happy with the result. So I'm going to say that it doesn't work for using your hot foil plates, but it's not supposed to anyway. It was just me experimenting, and I did think it would be quite a cool way of getting those hot foil plates to work, because you've got such a big surface area on this machine that I thought maybe it would be really good, because you can like fill up the whole area with a load of them and get a lot done. But it's not been successful. But later on in the video I will show you all of the things that I have managed to be successful with, and I'm also gonna roll some footage of me creating my apron as well. So while I've been talking, you've probably been seeing pictures or film of the machine working, and also some of the projects that I've been creating. So while my sibling was here over Christmas, they were designing quotes in Photoshop, turning them into SVG so I could use them in my LOKLiK cutting machine to cut. We were using white puff vinyl, black puff vinyl, and then white glitter HTV vinyl as well. All of those HTV, heat transfer vinyls. And we managed to create an apron for my mum, which says Mama on it, because I always call her Mama, and she always wears an apron. It's like part of her outfit for the day, because she doesn't want to get stuff down her when she's doing the washing up or cooking and things like that, or crafting too. Then we also did, the first thing we did was a hoodie for my sibling. We did a lovely quote on the front of the hoodie. We did one on the back of the hoodie as well, I think. We did glitter on one side, puff on the other side, and then we did the logo of their YouTube channel down the sleeve as well. So you'll be seeing all of that on the screen as I'm talking. We also did 2 tote bags as well. Again, we did both sides of them. We did glitter, or we might have done just normal on one side, I can't remember, and then we did puff on the other side, because the thing with puff heat transfer vinyl, you can only heat it once. So if you'd done puff on one side of something, you then couldn't do puff on the other side, because you'd be squashing the original puff. So you kind of have to do glitter on one side or plain on one side, and then turn it over and do the puff on the other side second. But they worked really nicely as a tote bag, and my mum has been getting tons of compliments with hers going to her knitting group, because it's got punny kind of knitting quotes on either side of it. So that's worked out really, really well, doing the tote bags, and a great gift to give to somebody as well, especially if they have a very niche kind of hobby, or have a certain type of humour that they would find a quote really funny. I think they're great kind of gifts to give to people. We also did 2 grey aprons with the same quote on for my sibling. They were both in puff vinyl. However, I think it was because we'd used a font that was really skinny. I said to Tori not to do any details that were too small, because if it puffs it kind of expands and it would, like, you'd lose the detail within there. But I hadn't really thought about too small meaning too skinny, that there wouldn't be enough adhesive on the back of it to actually stick to the garment really nicely. So we did have a little issue with a couple of the tiny skinny puffed letters trying to fall off, but we pressed it again. Even though you're not supposed to technically press puff vinyl again, we pressed it again when we realised a couple of bits were loose, and we think it's fixed it. So you can press puff vinyl twice. You might end up squashing it a little bit, but if it's not adhering on the back onto your garment, then you're going to want to press it again. Although I was thinking, if we were still having issues with it, we could put a tiny little bit of fabric glue behind the letters and stick them down that way as well to kind of fix it too. And then the final apparel or kind of personalised project that I've been playing with, I did this one a few days ago. I actually did my own apron. My sibling had bought me a navy apron blank as well, and I couldn't decide what I wanted to put on it. And then I just thought, well, I love switching my CRaFTi potential name round to say potentially crafty instead. So I just picked a couple of fonts that I like the look of. This one's called Buttercup Sample. I've had it on my computer for a while. I think I downloaded it from somewhere, and this was one of the ones that was in the LOKLiK Idea Studio, and I literally just typed them straight in the LOKLiK software, because I don't have Photoshop or anything fancy like that, so I couldn't do all of the fancy fonts that my sibling had been doing. So I literally just typed them out. I did this welding kind of thing. What was it called? Like uniting or something to do with the overlap, because some of these letters were sort of going inside each other and showing an extra cut line, and you can do a setting that kind of gets rid of that as well. So you can do that kind of thing in the LOKLiK Studio too. And I just did potentially crafty. I made it about 8 inches wide, and then cut it out with my white glitter heat transfer vinyl that I bought. But it's so pretty with the glitter on there. I don't know if you can, not really holding it up at a very good angle, but you can see the beautiful glitter on there. So while I've been talking and not actually showing you the apron, I will also show you the footage of me making this apron. So the first thing to do, I didn't film the screen of the LOKLiK Idea Studio, I just filmed the machine cutting it, but the first thing you want to do is take your glitter heat transfer vinyl, find out which side the carrier sheet is, which is the clear piece, and you want that face down on your mat. Make sure it's nicely pressed into place, insert it into your LOKLiK cutting machine, and then press start on the computer or on your app on your phone or your tablet, and your writing will cut for you. And then once it's finished cutting, you can peel the vinyl off of your mat, cut off any excess in case you want to use it for something else later on. Then you can peel off the outside, use your weeding tool to pick out any of the interior pieces, and then that carrier sheet that the heat transfer vinyl is on is sticky, like really lightly tacky and sticky, so then you can actually use it to place it in the perfect position onto your garment. Although before you've placed it onto the garment, you want to have the garment on the plate or the ironing board piece that comes out of the LOKLiK ImPress Auto 2, and you want to have pre-pressed your garment first so that you've got out any creases. And also on the LOKLiK ImPress Auto 2, it has built-in sort of selections for everything that you want to be able to work with. So you can go to the materials library and you can pick what your heat transfer, or what you're doing basically. So you can pick heat transfer vinyl, and then you can pick that it's actually glitter, and then you can go into what your substrate is and pick that too. So I think I picked polyester and cotton blend for this apron. And you pick that, and then you click OK, and it goes through and it's put all of the settings in there for you. So you don't even have to consult the roll of heat transfer vinyl that you're using. You can actually just get going straight away. Like, I had never used this before, and me and my sibling just bashed out the double-sided hoodie, the 2 tote bags, the 3 aprons with no trouble at all. And the LOKLiK cutting machine like instantly perfectly cut all of the vinyl we were playing with as well, because I hadn't actually cut glitter heat transfer vinyl or puff heat transfer vinyl on my LOKLiK cutting machine before we tried those either, and it worked so brilliantly. And then you just want to wait for the machine to reach the desired temperature, and once it has, the little ring around the top of the machine will go green, and then you can just make sure your garment is on the ironing board. You can press it in, press the start button, it will go down, press it nice and flat. Then you can put your weeded vinyl onto your garment where you want it to go, put the Teflon mat over the top, push it back in, press the start button again, it'll go down, it'll press it, and then you can, when it's cool, peel off the backing from the vinyl, and then you have your perfect personalised apron or tote bag, pillowcase, you know, whatever you want to make with it really. But I just think it is so cool that you can really go to town with personalising bits and pieces by just using your cutting machine to cut something that you've created yourself, and then be able to press it onto a garment as well with this machine too. So I probably should give you more details about the actual machine itself. I feel like this video is probably all over the place because I'm getting too excited and talking about other bits and pieces, but the actual machine itself is a new version of the LOKLiK ImPress. They had a previous version, but this new version, you can actually, the reason why it's got so many built-in presets for things is because it's got so much more variability in the settings than it had before, and this is why I wanted to experiment with it, because you can change so many things, and the things that you can change are the pressure, which you couldn't change the pressure in the first one, and this one you can actually change it to go from a 20 kilogram pressure all the way up to an 80 kilogram pressure. I think it's in 10 or 20 kilograms increments, which is, if you're elsewhere in the world, it's a 44 pound to 176 pound pressure. That's the scale of variation. You can also change the temperature. I'm pretty sure the old one you could change the temperature as well, and the time and everything, but the temperature range is 100 degrees C to 210 degrees C, or 210 degrees Fahrenheit to 410 degrees Fahrenheit. and it actually heats up much quicker than the previous model as well. You can get from it being cold and turned off to the maximum temperature in 5.5 minutes. So it's really, really quick to heat up. It takes longer to cool down. So if you're working on a few different projects, do the cooler one first, because it's much easier for the machine to heat up to a higher temperature to do another project than it is for it to cool down, if you know what I mean. It's quicker between it. So go from your lowest temperature project up as you're working in a session. I'd recommend that, because when I was doing all of this experimenting, I tried higher temperatures and then went down, and it took a lot longer to try and make the machine cool down. You can also change your time settings. I think they've increased this. I don't think you could do a time of quite such a long time as you can now, but you can do it from 1 second to 999 seconds. The longest I pressed anything for with my experiments was 60 seconds. But obviously if you are experimenting, or you've got some kind of material or some kind of process that I haven't tried yet, because I'm not sure how long sublimation requires for you to put the heat onto there, or also if you have printed on like a heat transfer paper, or if you are using a direct to film transfer. I don't know how long they require pressing for, but you have that ability to change it from 1 to 999 seconds. So you really can play around with how long it's pressing down for. Also, this new machine, you can press thicker things. So for example, I was thinking in crafting and home decor kind of terms, you can get those, they're kind of like a canvas, but they're made out of wood. So they're completely solid in the middle. They're not going to dip down like a canvas would, because it's not supported in the middle. So you could, if you wanted to, have like maybe painted it first and then use your heat transfer vinyl to press a quote onto something like that, maybe carry on decorating it afterwards and do some really cool home decor like that, because the gap between the base platen and the heating platen is 4.5 centimetres now, where I think before it was maybe only 1 inch deep, but now you've got 4.5 centimetres, which is nearly 2 inches. So you've got a nice deep depth to be able to press, which is fantastic. And also one of the really cool things about this machine that I love, I'll play another bit of the footage of it doing it now, but when it turns on, the screen comes up automatically. It's an automatic screen. You can go into the settings and change it if you don't like the angle that it comes up at, but it automatically comes up when you turn the machine on, which is really cool. It's like quite futuristic doing that. And also the screen is touchscreen, so it's really easy to select whatever you want to do, to change the settings, because you can also, and what I've been doing in my experiments, you can change custom settings. So there are 4 different custom settings. You can't rename them, so you kind of got to make a note that custom setting 1 is for doing, what was my custom setting 1? Custom setting 1 was what I was playing with to try and get hot foil plates to work, and custom setting 2 is what I was playing with to use bonding powder. So you can kind of just remember what your custom settings were for, or you can just change them every time you want to use them as well. You can kind of do whatever you like to. And yeah, I think that's all of the main details of this fantastic LOKLiK ImPress Auto 2 Smart Automatic Heat Press. But also, you can get it in 3 different colours as well. Mine is the bubble blue colour, but you can also get daisy white and pastel pink in the UK. And I think in the US you can get a lovely light purple colour. These will match with other machines that are coming out as well. They're sort of, I think they're keeping the same kind of colours so that you can have continuity between your machines in your craft room too. I should also say actually, this machine is very heavy. And I think it is because it has that ability to put so much pressure on that it needs to be such a heavy, sturdy machine. So make sure you've got someone strong around you when your machine arrives. Luckily my sibling was here, so they lifted it up onto the table for me. But it is very heavy. It's 20 kilograms. Basically, it's about all 3 of our dogs that we have. If you lifted them all up in one go, a pumpkin, a pickle and a willow, that's basically the weight of the machine, which is 44 pounds if you're elsewhere in the world as well. And also it's quite large. I think some of these kind of heat press machines require you to like swing part of it out to the side, but because this one has the ironing board that pulls outwards, you do only need its footprint to sit on the table. You don't need the table underneath the ironing board. And I was experimenting with a very heavy granite surface protector, because when I was trying out all sorts of different things, I thought maybe you don't need the squishy cushion, maybe you need something firm. So I got this granite heat protectant kind of work surface saver that I was putting on the platform, and it still wasn't tipping forwards, even though the platform was fully out, and this is quite a heavy granite piece. It still wasn't tipping forward, so it really can support a lot of like counterweight when the ironing board is out, which is great to know. But the actual footprint of the machine is 54 centimetres by 44.5 centimetres by 33 centimetres. And it's 33 centimetres high, and the depth is the 54 centimetres. So it fits on one of the standard sort of IKEA kind of tables. You could technically fit two next to each other on a kind of table like that. And that table seems to be substantially sturdy enough to hold that weight of it as well, which is good to know too. And you can actually fit your Auto 2 on one side of a 1 metre IKEA table and fit your cutting machine on the other side, which is great too. The heat plate of it, so the plate that you can actually put your projects, your pillowcases, your tote bags, your hoodies, all that kind of thing on, is 38 centimetres square or 15 inches square. So you can get a really decent sized piece. Like if your cutting machine can only cut a 12 by 12 inch mat, then whatever you cut you can press, because the heat plate is 15 inches, so you'd still have a wiggle room of 1.5 inches either side of whatever the biggest thing is that you could cut. So that's quite nice to know as well. You don't have to think, oh, am I cutting something that's too big? But I mean, if you do have the ability to use like a 12 by 24 inch mat or something, do think about the size of the heat plate then, because I mean, maybe you might be able to press it in two parts actually. I've never actually thought about something like that, but you might be able to press that kind of thing in two parts. But that's just something to consider if your machine can cut bigger than the 12-inch standard kind of mat. And I think I've run through before that you can press all sorts of things like your glitter heat transfer vinyl, your puff heat transfer vinyl, your heat transfer printable paper, so that you can like flip a photograph, print it out and transfer it onto something like that. Sublimation as well, which sublimation is the process of something going from a solid to a gas. So you're taking the like printed ink and you're doing this scientific process of sublimating it onto your project. You do need special things called sublimation blanks, and you need a sublimation printer to be able to get that to work, and subsequently then sublimation ink and sublimation paper to be able to get that to work. I do have a friend called Claire who has a sublimation printer, so at some point I might experiment with that. I'm kind of thinking I want, you know, like photos of the dogs on different things as well, but you can do all sorts of things like coasters, mouse mats, I guess things like book covers and stuff as well. If you actually have something that has that sublimation coating on it, you can do all sorts of different things like that, and play around with those kind of things too. And then you can also do the direct to film transfers that you can send off to companies and they'll send them back to you, and you can sort of add decals and images to your projects that way as well. So I think I've kind of explained everything to do with the machine and all of the actual garment kind of things that I have played with. I'm just going to get myself sorted and then I'll go through some of the experiments that I've been doing. Okay, so I'll go through some of the successful experiments first, and then I'll sort of gloss over the non-successful experiments. But one of the main things I really did want to get to work was the puff vinyl onto cardstock, because if you saw this video, I did this the end of last year. I was showing you the puff heat transfer vinyl, but I was applying it with my mini LOKLiK heat press. And the thing about puff vinyl is you really need a certain amount of pressure and temperature, and everything's got to be the perfect kind of settings to get it to work, and you can't achieve that with the little handheld one. Even though I wanted to try it, you can't actually achieve it, and these were the kind of results I was getting. This bit here, I did make two of these cards. The one I gave to my mum was better, but this bit here didn't puff up at all. It's still like a slick kind of surface, and then these bits here, it gives quite a nice effect because it kind of looks like a flocked velvet kind of finish, which is pretty nice actually. but it's not what puff is supposed to look like. And also the sewing machine does not like sewing through it. I was really trying to make it sew through it, but look at the wacky tension across here. It's like big stitches and then tiny stitches, because it really didn't want to sew through this. But that was like my initial experiment with puff heat transfer vinyl onto card for projects. However, now I've got the LOKLiK Auto 2, you can get your puff vinyl to work on your cards. So these were the first couple that I had done. Oh, where's the other card actually? There's another card lurking around somewhere that I was going to show you. Oh, it's under here. This was my original idea for a sped up video. I'll show you that in a second. But yeah, these were some of the first two. This was a paw print. You probably will have seen this paw print earlier on one of the projects. I think we put it on... I think it was on the tote bag for Mum actually, and it did go a little bit weird and wrinkly. I think it's just because it's such a large surface area, and also because I'm working onto cardstock here. But the one on the tote bag went in quite wrinkly as well, which I wasn't really expecting, but it still looked alright. It kind of looked like the actual texture of a dog's paw print anyway. But this was one of the ones that I had done onto a piece of card, and I would consider these two successful, even though they're kind of like... It's really difficult for you to see actually. I've got all of my lights on, but it's really difficult to kind of see that the wrinkles in there. Oh, you can kind of see it from that angle. So it's kind of like wrinkled, but I quite like the look of that. And I can't remember what I was saying then. Oh yeah, I would consider these a success, even though they're kind of wrinkled like that. This again is not quite the exact result you're supposed to get with puff vinyl, but some of those ones that you saw earlier of using puff onto fabric, that's the kind of results that you're supposed to get with puff vinyl. This is slightly more wrinkly than it's supposed to be, but again, as we're working onto cardstock, it's not supposed to be transferred onto cardstock. So any of these sort of things that I'm showing you now towards the end of the video, it's not the machine's fault if any of it doesn't work. I just wanted to see if I could get it to work, but it's not supposed to do these things. So this was the puff kind of vinyl onto cards, and those were the first couple of experiments. Then I did this one, and you can see that I've had this machine a while, because this was supposed to be a sped up video for the beginning of the year, for the new year of 2025, and this is where the sort of the cards that you would have seen on Thursday kind of came from. But I really wanted to see if you could heat the puff onto the same colour of cardstock, so black onto black, white onto white, and then use your inks or spray inks or gilding polishes and things like that to kind of colour the card and then pick out the detail of where the puff is. And I really wanted to play around with that. So the first card that I was going to be doing in a sped up video was going to be this New Year card for 2025, but I obviously got behind, didn't do enough of the experimenting. I had a cold over Christmas, so it kind of put me back a bit. I didn't end up using this as a card like that, so I was playing with the Lisa Horton Interference inks, which you would have seen in Thursday's video, to kind of see if I could get this cool galaxy background to work for another idea that I wanted to do. So this is, this one again did go quite wrinkly, but I think it looks really cool, especially when you pick out the detail with your polishes and things. And I was saying in Thursday's beginning bit of the video, if you didn't watch that one, you might want to go and have a watch of it, but I was saying in the beginning of it, yes, you can kind of get these sort of techniques or this kind of result with some other craft products that you can get, like Cosmic Shimmer Fluffy Stuff, the Andy Skinner Lava Paste, the Nuvo Expanding Mousse, things like that. However, you kind of have to use them in whatever stencil design that you have. You can't customly make them into a design unless you cut your own stencil. But also sometimes they squish under the stencil and get a bit blobby. Sometimes you don't quite heat them enough, a bit flakes off, you smudge a bit across, you know, there's all sorts of different things that go into using an actual wet medium kind of project or product. But I really wanted to see if puff vinyl would work for that kind of effect on a card, because it's a lot less messy, it's a lot more precise in the results. You can use your cutting machine to cut it to any shape that you want to as well. and you can hand cut it too. This card I was showing you earlier, I hand cut those holly leaves and the berries in the video, so you can see how easy it is to hand cut it and do this kind of thing with it as well. So you don't have to have a cutting machine to use the puff vinyl either. Although if you want to get it to puff nicely, you do need some kind of machine that has a good decent pressure on it. Oh, actually, before I go any further, I should say, for this, if you are going to get this LOKLiK ImPress Auto 2 and you want to do this kind of technique with it, I'm not saying you have to, I'm just saying if you wanted to, I'm going to tell you how I got the result to work. So it has these presets in it, the machine, and so I actually just used some of the presets to get this to work, and I just selected the substrate as canvas because I thought that's probably the closest thing to cardstock, because they're expecting canvas to be quite flat and thin, so they would have adjusted any of the pressure and everything to go towards that. And then obviously I also selected heat transfer vinyl and puff heat transfer vinyl, and the settings that it gave me was 150 degrees C for 15 seconds for 80 kilograms of pressure, which is the highest amount of pressure it can do, which is what puff vinyl tends to need. It needs that really high pressure on it. And that gave me these results that I've been getting and been using. And I also did a different or a specific kind of sandwich in there as well. I left the pressing cushion on the bottom platen, and then I put a piece of greaseproof paper. I put the puff vinyl on top of the card on top of the greaseproof paper, and then I put another piece of greaseproof paper over the top so that anything was protected. You can definitely use the Teflon sheet as well. I just thought, because I'm experimenting and I'm using card and I'm not using fabric, and you know, things might go a little bit haywire, or you know, because you're experimenting, I thought greaseproof paper was the best way to go. And also, before I started doing any of these things, I was just testing the settings with a plain piece of white card to test that nothing was going to be flammable. I know it's probably not that likely that you could set a piece of card on fire using this machine, but I did just want to do those kind of safety checks first, so I just went through and did on the lowest temperature and then stepped it up to 150 degrees, and that was the hottest that I tried it. I didn't try and go up to 210 degrees just in case anything bad happened, but a generic 300 GSM black or white card seemed to be able to withstand 150 degrees centigrade using it in a pressing machine like this, because I was kind of looking at online. I was googling what is the temperature of a laminator, what's the temperature that a heat gun gets to, what's the melting point of embossing powder, all those kind of things, to kind of see what cardstock can usually withstand, and I didn't end up needing to go any higher than 150 degrees C, so that's what I went up to, and I knew that that would work. So anyway, back to what I was doing. Thursday's video, you would have seen these two cards, and what I did was I used my LOKLiK cutting machine. I went into the library on the LOKLiK Idea Studio, I searched for clouds, scrolled down a bit of the way, found all of these cool like wispy Halloweeny kind of clouds, cut a bunch of them out from puff heat transfer vinyl, and I did, because when you're using puff you can only heat it once, or you're only supposed to heat it once, what I did to make placement easier, I drew a rectangle, the rough size of the cards that I like to make, on my actual LOKLiK software, and I put the clouds within that space, and then I cut them in that position from my heat transfer vinyl. So it's probably wasting a little bit more vinyl than you might like to use, but it means that they were all in the perfect position, so I could just stick it to a piece of card and then press it, and then they came out in the same position that I wanted. And I did also have excess pieces. I haven't quite worked out how you can cut a shape in half, if that's even possible, so I just let it cut the excess pieces, and then I used those on this card to create a second background. There was only supposed to be one card from these clouds, but because I could actually get a little bit more of the cloudiness out of a couple of the hangover pieces, I made two cards out of it, using the same kind of technique with the Lisa Horton interference inks in the background. Also on these cards, I was going to go over the clouds again with some Wax Lyrical in slate grey, to make them look black again, but I totally forgot about it and already stuck all of the details on and didn't want to do it. But I still quite like it actually, because it kind of just gives the galaxy a bit of texture, and you've still got the stars coming in front of it rather than the clouds being in the foreground. They're just sort of there giving a bit of texture to the background, so I think it looked alright in the end. But that was Thursday's video. If you want to see the whole process behind that, there should be, I haven't edited it yet, but there should be footage of me showing the cutting process and the heating process using the LOKLiK Auto 2 as well for that. And then this one is going to be tomorrow's video, so hopefully you will be seeing this video tomorrow in sped up form. And this pattern was on the LOKLiK Design Studio. It's a free pattern. They have hundreds of thousands of free patterns on there, and I just picked the pattern out. I think I chopped part of it down actually, so that it would be more of the sort of size that I would tend to use, and then I played around with which bits were going to cut, so that I could cut it all from the puff vinyl and weed out the bits that I didn't want, so that it's kind of the opposite of each other. I can't remember what was the issue with this. I cut these out a little while ago when we were doing all of the fabric projects, so that I had them already ready. And I did do the clouds the other day when I was doing that video, but this was one of the ones that I already had pre-cut, and I'm sure I had to fiddle around with it and maybe add an extra square on it or something to make it cut where I wanted it to, something like that. Or maybe I had to put extra flowers in some areas. I think they were gonna. Oh, I think it was they were gonna cut on an extra layer that you would add on top, but I wanted them to cut into the layer. I think maybe that's what it was that I was playing with. But anyway, you can play around with all sorts of different designs. And what I want to do with this, and hopefully you'll see this tomorrow, is I want to use my ink sprays on here. I'm thinking blues and greens, and I might bring in some sparkly ink sprays as well, and then do what I was intending to do on Thursday's video and show you adding a wax lyrical, a gilded touch, a polish, an opal blaze or something back over the top to kind of highlight the pattern back out again. So that's what tomorrow's sped up video is hopefully going to be able to show you some kind of card like that. I was thinking to try and get 2 cards out of this, but if you think of my normal size of card, I think I did, yeah, I think I sized it so it would just do 1 card really nicely, so it's probably just going to be a 1 card kind of quick video with a die cut sentiment across it or something as well. But I just thought I'd show you this uncoloured. I was going to have filmed this video first and then show it to you, but I thought I might as well show you it uncoloured, and then tomorrow you can see kind of how it's transformed to being the full colour version of whatever this is going to turn into. So that's going to be tomorrow's video. Then, sorry if this is a lot of rabbiting on, but I did all these experiments and I thought it's quite nice to be able to share them with you and kind of show you the sort of results that I got. So the next experiment, let's show you this piece first. So there's this product called bonding powder. This is a WOW one. There's also a Sticky Ranger one. I think there's been some others as well. I've never had luck with it, and I think I know why now, because it has to be hot when you put the foil on, and it's always confused me in the instructions. It never seems to like say that. It says the powder will melt and raise. It will take a few seconds to solidify, but that kind of means to me if it's going to take a few seconds to solidify that you should put the foil on after it's solidified, but it doesn't stick because it's not hot and sticky anymore. So you have to put the foil on when this powder is still hot. But if you want to do an all over background pattern, how are you supposed to heat up the whole background and get the foil on before it's cooled down and get it pressed on and everything? You then have to go through it and keep heating up a small little section to try and get it to work, which seems very annoying. So I wanted to see, could we use this bonding powder with the auto heat press to get a foiled result without squashing it? Because if it's a powder, it's going to be a bit raised. If you're melting it again and applying pressure to it, you're going to squash it when the foil hits it. So I wanted to see, is it possible to kind of do that? And because this machine has that variable pressure, I was able to play around with it. So the first version was this one. I did a custom setting, sorry for my really rubbish writing on the back of this, but it was a custom setting of 150 degrees for 20 seconds at 80 kilograms pressure. I had the pressing pillow, greaseproof paper, and the card with the bonding powder, the foil, and some more greaseproof paper. And this one didn't squish as much. This is actually, this stamp from in here. So it was a fairly thick lined sort of stamp to begin with. And this was the result that I got. This was the first result I got, and I thought, oh, actually then, this is probably going to be doable if I play around with the settings. So I was thinking, oh, less pressure is going to be the obvious option then. If that was the full amount of pressure, less pressure is going to give a less squished effect. So then I did less pressure and it gave a more squished effect. So then I was like, well, that's really confusing. So this was the same like custom, but changing it from 80 kilograms down to 20 kilograms using the exact same sandwich, same temperature, same time, just changed the pressure down to be less, and it squished it more, which was really confusing me because I was like, but surely if you put less pressure on it, it should squish the embossing powder out less and you get a crisper look. So that I gave up after that day. And then I came back and experimented some more another day. It was actually yesterday. And so I was playing with these ones. And this is a much finer stamp. So this is, I've still got it here to the side. This is a Simon Says stamp. And it's called Geometric Snowflakes. And this, you can see, it's a really fine stamp. And I thought maybe if I work with a finer stamp, I can really tell more how much it squishes. So it does squish more. Even the perfect sort of setting that I got, it does squish it more than just stamping with it. But I think with any kind of effect you're going to do with this, that's going to happen. So the first experiment of this, basically I should have said this before, how you use the bonding powder. You stamp your image, you put the embossing powder on as you normally would, and you heat set it. So you get a piece of card that looks like this. You've got your embossing powder on there, kind of just looks like clear embossing powder on there. And then for this whole process, you then put the foil on top of it, pretty side up, so that the back side is going to stick onto the embossing powder. And then I was just using greaseproof paper so I didn't mess up the machine or, you know, get any mess anywhere else. And this was the first result that I got. And actually, that looks pretty good because it's such a fine lined stamp anyway. Being squished, it still looks fine because, you know, the detail was so tiny to begin with. The squashedness of the lines doesn't look bad compared to if you start with a thicker stamp, the squashedness of the lines kind of obliterates what's there. So this one was going back to 80 kilograms because that seemed to be working, and then I changed the temperature on this one down to 100, so I kept the other things the same. So I went back to the one that worked the best. This is how I do experiments. You can tell that I've got a chemistry degree, but because I like doing experiments. But basically, whenever you do an experiment, you just want to change one of the variables, so you keep everything else the same and you change the one variable. Now in this case I did change the stamp as well as the temperature, but basically the one variable that you're trying to figure out how it works, basically, because you want this to be able to work with any stamped image that you've stamped. So for this one, I went back to the 80 kilograms pressure because that worked best before. The 20 seconds seemed to be fine. I didn't want to mess with that yet. And I went down to 100 degrees. So that was that setting. So that gave a pretty good impression actually, because the detail was so fine to begin with. Then I did this one. So this one I decided, okay, 100 degrees is working better, let's change the time. So instead of being 20 seconds, I halved the time to 10 seconds. And you can see less time heated up the powder less, so therefore it got less squashed. There wasn't as much time for it to be squashed under pressure to squidge out. I know there's a bit of mess in the background, but I don't tend to mind that kind of look. If you're looking for perfect kind of results, this probably isn't for you. But to be honest, that could either be too much pressure from the machine, which we can't make the pressure any less, so you know, you kind of have to live with it, or it could have been little specks of powder elsewhere on the design as well. I wasn't being particularly careful with extra specks of powder. That could be why the foil is sticking in some areas. But anyway, that was changing the time. So then I thought, okay, that's much better. It's still not quite as fine as it could be. So I changed the time again and I halved it again to 5 seconds. And that was pretty good. Although this area here, I couldn't tell. Maybe it didn't have enough powder on it to begin with. Because, you know, when you're stamping, sometimes the edge pieces don't have as much powder. And this was just a square that I'd cut up. So I thought, okay, you know, maybe it's just that there wasn't as much powder there, but this area looks brilliant and better than the 10 seconds. But I thought maybe it does need a little bit more time than that. So then I went on to 8 seconds, and I think that worked pretty good for 8 seconds. And this is why I wanted to try this technique with the bonding powder, because you can see here that is the perfect rainbow because I used rainbow foil on it. But if you don't heat up all of the embossing powder or the bonding powder at the same time, and you have to go step by step all the way down your image like you can do with your heat tool to get it to work with the foil, you won't be able to keep the perfect rainbow. So for projects like this where you really wanted that rainbow of the foil that you've got to be the perfect rainbow, you wouldn't be able to do this with a heat tool because you'll keep moving the foil and then it won't be the perfect continuous rainbow down it. So this was kind of the reason why I wanted to see if it would work. Not necessarily because there's no other way of doing it, because there is other ways of doing it, but I thought it's a way of consistently heating the whole background so that you could transfer some kind of patterned foil to it, whether it is a rainbow, whether it is one of these ones that has like the gorgeous stars all in it, or a watercolory kind of effect on it. You can actually continuously transfer the pattern onto there. Also, I'm thinking of like a background as well. For example, I really want to use my hieroglyph stamp and do some gold foiling on like a page for a background that I'm then going to turn into an art journal or something like that, you know. So that's kind of my thought process behind it. Maybe this is something that you're not interested in, but it's just one of those things that I wanted to experiment with. So that is why I wanted to see if this would work, and so that was the best result that I got. Even though there are little splotchy areas, again, that could have been me not dusting off as much of the powder, but some of this was actually coming off. Either if you use, let's just have a try together. I'm never very good at this. I have never been successful with trying to remove these excess pieces when you've done hot foiling or any sort of foiling. It always smudges everywhere for me. So let's try an adhesive eraser and see. So that actually maybe works best over here to pick up any of those excess pieces. It is kind of smudging the colour a tiny bit, maybe. Yes, it does smudge the colour a tiny bit, but that is getting rid of a lot of those excess bits of foil. Let's just try a normal rubber. See, I think that is actually removing some of the foil that's on the embossing powder. So you might have to be a lot more careful with a normal rubber, and I think with a sand eraser you're going to have to then be even more careful, and that is really smudging it. So the best option out of these ones is this adhesive eraser, because it is kind of just sticking to it and picking it up, although where your foil is more highly pigmented it is kind of smudging it a little bit. But if you manage to get it so there's only a few little excess foiled pieces, I think this adhesive eraser is going to be the best result for this kind of thing. Yeah, I think that's going to be actually pretty decent. You can get some pretty good results with this then. I was wondering how I was going to get all of those extra little pieces off, but actually that adhesive eraser is really good for that. So there we go. If you've never been successful with, I don't think I've ever actually tried the adhesive eraser. I just saw it in front of me and thought we'd give that a go. That's actually really good. So if you've ever struggled with those little speckly bits when you've been foiling, the ones that aren't supposed to be there, then possibly an adhesive eraser is the best way to go. This was a Creative Expressions or Cosmic Shimmer one. Mum and I got one and then cut it in half. It's supposed to be a big square, and we cut it in half so we could share it. But yeah, that works really nicely. So that's really good. Okay, so we've figured out a way now of getting rid of those little speckly pieces. So that then is a very good way of continuously transferring a pattern to a bonded powder stamped image. So I'm definitely going to be using that in the future for backgrounds. I'm probably going to do a video on it. There'll probably be a sped up video coming up at some point using foiling in this way, because I think that's turned out really, really nicely. So that is the two successful things that I have managed to do. And also when you do this kind of thing, you end up with the leftover foil as well. Obviously not perfect because we've had all those little speckly portions, but even when it was blobby, it still gave a really good pattern. And this is actually heat transfer foil, so There might be a way of getting this to work in the Auto 2 heat press. I couldn't get hot foil plates to work, but perhaps the waste foil would work. I might have to experiment with that further when I get some time, but that could be another thing to experiment with. But if not, double-sided adhesive, sticking it onto a piece of card and then just using it as a full piece like that, or trying to pull the backing off. Sometimes double-sided adhesive will really stick to these visible areas of the carrier sheet and there's no way you can get it off again. But sometimes you can be lucky with getting that design to transfer onto an adhesive sheet, so you can play around with those kind of things as well. But that is definitely an experiment for the future to try on this Auto 2 heat press as well. So those are my successful experiments, as I said. The puff heat transfer vinyl and using bonding powder for your foiling are successful experiments. And then my not so successful ones, sorry if this video is getting long, I'll try and not speak too long about these, but my not so successful ones were trying to hot foil toner sheets. So, I mean, technically they're successful because I have foiled the toner sheet, but I couldn't work out if it was the pressure, the temperature, the amount of time, but something was making the foil wrinkle. So when the foil was on top of my toner printed sheet, it was then getting really wrinkly. You can kind of see it still on this piece actually. It was getting really wrinkly like that, so then it wasn't transferring evenly, because the way that toner foil works is the heat heats up the toner and then that acts as an adhesive and grabs onto the foil. With hot transfer foil or heat transfer foil that we used with the bonding powder, yes, the bonding powder is heating up and acting as an adhesive, but normally with a heat transfer foil, the foil has an adhesive on the back of it, and that's how it works with hot foil plates and things like that. So the two different foils work differently. I did a whole video on it a while back showing how you can foil wordies and things like that and the difference between the foils. But yeah, I could not work out why I was getting this wrinkled kind of effect. I do quite like it, but I can't really say that it's a successful way to foil your transfer sheets because you're not getting a perfect transfer of foil. You're getting this sort of mottled effect, and you can see from all of the pieces that I have here, I tried a lot of different settings to try and get this to work. I think I have, oh no, do I have them here? I think I've left the sheets over there, but I tried a lot of different variations, changing the temperature, changing the time, changing the pressure, changing the sandwich. I put that granite surface protector on there to kind of act as a hard surface to get more even pressure. I did it straight onto the pressing pillow of the actual machine as well. I played around with different sandwiches of like copy paper around it or greaseproof paper, and obviously I was using different patterns as well because I thought maybe maybe because this was such a solid design of loads of lines, maybe that's why the foil was wrinkling a bit. Maybe I should try something more solid like the heart. And I mean, you do get a foiled effect. It is in the background a bit like that other technique. However, I didn't try this adhesive rubber on it. Let's see. Doesn't work as well on that. Could be the foil though, or it could be the type of card, because this is one I had bought. It's a WOW one that they do these actual toner printed pieces that you can play with. But yeah, not removing the excess foil as well as the other one, but it is a different type of foil because this is a toner reactive foil. But yeah, I did a lot of experimenting, but I couldn't get the perfect results. But if you like a distressed result, then it works really well. It gives that really cool distressed effect, and you could also then place another piece of foil over the top and run it through again, and hopefully that foil would wrinkle in different places and would catch those remaining black pieces and give you a two-tone effect. So there are ways of using this Auto 2 heat press to kind of get a foiled effect with your toner sheets, but it's not the most perfect way. It's not better than any of the other ways that you can do this, but I just wanted to experiment to see if it was possible, and turns out it's not. I mean, it is, but it's not perfect. So it's possible, but it's not the perfect result every time. So that was kind of my first sort of fail. And then the other one, I really thought that this would work, but I could not get it to work. You can see I've got all sorts of different tries with this on different, oh, that was another one of the puff vinyl paws. But I've had all sorts of different tries, like couple on one side, one on the other side. I tried with different hot foil plates, and I just could not get any of these to work. You can see there was enough pressure because that you can see the outline of that seahorse, but it wasn't then pressing in the middle. It was only pressing on the outside edges, which I didn't understand. And like on this one, it was only pressing around the outside of the dots on here. This was the best result that I could get, but it's cool actually. It's quite like a distressed dot kind of effect. And actually, let's see if that adhesive eraser will get rid of these edge pieces. No, I think because there was a lot of pressure on this, it's gonna have activated the adhesive on the back of the foil on those edge pieces, so it's not gonna come off. But this was the best result I could get with using one of these hot foil plates. So this was a Spellbinders one. I also tried a butterfly Spellbinders one, and that one didn't work either. It was detailed like the seahorses, but this is the Janus Macula polka dot strip one, which is one of my favourites of a heat transfer or a hot foil plate. I'm never sure what you're supposed to call them. Hot foil. Yeah, I think hot foil plate. And then this was a Jane Davenport one from years ago. I thought, because I was getting this kind of result with the mess down the edges, I thought, well, if I use one that's got a die that coordinates with it, then I can just die cut it out, and then it wouldn't matter that it was doing this, but I couldn't get that one to work. So I was doing all the same things. I was playing around with all of the settings, changing the temperature, changing the time, changing the pressure. That was the best one that I managed to get, but it was still missing different areas, and it was also over foiling as well. There's quite a few bits in here that the foil is joining two different sections together, and there shouldn't be a little bit there, but that was the best I could manage to get. So it's really not a consistent kind of thing to try. I mean, I could do some more experiments, but I think I tried about 20 or 30 different ways by adding in my rubber mat from my Spellbinders machine. Again, I used the granite plate to try and be a really hard surface for it to press into. I did the hot foil plate with the detail design up towards the heated element. I did it down towards so that it was getting heated from the back. I changed the amount of time so it was in there for longer, so heating up for longer. And I just could not get it to work successfully. I mean, as you can see, I've got partial things to work, and the best result I could get was doing a custom setting for 150 degrees C, 45 seconds, 80 kilograms of pressure, and then the sandwich up from the bottom was the pressing pillow, a piece of greaseproof, my rubber mat, another piece of greaseproof to keep that protected, my card with my foil, with my hot plate, with 2 more pieces of greaseproof paper on the top. That was the best result that I could get from it. But I was really hoping that this would work, because I thought it would be a really good way of batch making all of your hot foiled kind of things. Like, so example, you could have done a load of seahorses, butterflies, all sorts of different things that could then be die cut out and used on projects later on, but I could not get it to work. And it's not the machine's fault, because the machine is not supposed to hot foil. It's supposed to apply heat activated things onto garments and home decor kind of projects and stuff. It's not supposed to do any sort of hot foiling, so I can't really be annoyed at it for not working, because it's not supposed to do it. But I just wanted to share my sort of non-successful experiments in here as well. I mean, the toner one is kind of half successful, and I suppose this one is kind of half successful as well, but not successful enough that you would get rid of your hot foiling machine and use this instead to do some hot foiling with, basically. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video looking at the LOKLiK ImPress Auto 2 Smart Automatic Heat Press Machine. I'm sorry if it's not the kind of video that you were maybe expecting, but I will link below a couple of videos that I found of other people showing off this machine in the way it's intended to be used. So if you're looking more for a rundown of exactly what this machine is supposed to do, I will link you a couple of other people that I found, and I'll link you to the LOKLiK YouTube channel as well. But I just wanted to have an experiment, see if I could get these things to work, and turns out if a machine's not designed to do something, it probably won't be able to do it. But I just wanted to see if I could get it to work, and I'm very pleased with the things that I did get to work. So I had a really fun time experimenting, actually. Even though they weren't successful, I did really enjoy being like, what can I change now, and why is this not working the way I thought it was going to work? And you know, it was quite fun having an experiment. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Sorry that it's been probably a very long one, but hopefully you liked the sped up video last Thursday, and then there'll be another one tomorrow showing you how I'm going to finish off this puff vinyl project as well. So thank you so much for watching, and if you did want to get hold of this Auto 2 machine, I will leave links to it in the description box below the video as well, and they are having a Valentine's sale at the moment too, so you can get it on a better offer than you might normally be able to. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next video. Bye!